And welcome to another episode of the MatthewJ Show. I would say Michael Voss Show. Kind of the same thing. It's great that Michael is back on with us. We got so much to discuss tonight. Michael, what is happening up there in New York City?
Oh, things have been getting crazy. It seems that the predictions that we were making about Zorhan Mamdani, sadly, they've actually come true. And that's having a very big impact on everything in New York. And it's setting a stage that we're seeing in Texas, that we're seeing across this country. And that trend is pretty negative. And I think it's long-term negative. So that's going to be interesting. And I'm sure you'll have some questions about that, and we'll go into it during the show. That's one of the big things. And of course, we've got Kathy Hochul going for her re-election. That's been interesting, to say the least. There's a couple of candidates in places no one would expect them to be. Elise Stefanik is no longer in the race because she was going to lose, but she's been replaced. And that is causing a bit of a scandal in and of itself. Again, you probably will ask about it. We'll talk about it a little bit somewhere down the line because, folks, as always, Matthew has told me absolutely zero about what we're going to talk about, which is fine. I actually like that. I actually prefer that. But so it's going to be brand new. You're going to hear the question. It's going to be the first time I'm hearing it, and I'll answer it, and then we'll go from there. But I'm pretty sure these may be a couple things you're going to be talking about. I know I've been talking about them.
Michael, we're going to be getting into a lot of New York City and New York politics quicker than you can imagine. I do want to welcome aboard all our X Live viewers. We're working on some technical things here, but I'm glad X is now with us, along with YouTube and Rumble Live as well. And of course, Michael Voss live from New York City. Michael, listen, I don't want to hit you over the head as soon as we start, but I have to ask you about this. I just read literally before we came on from Right Angle News Network. It stated drug tents are now popping up all across New York City with drugs being sold openly, prices boldly displayed, and police doing nothing. Do you know anything about that, Michael?
No, that's a new development. It's another problem with Zorhan Mamdani. Zorhan is being the socialist that we were afraid he was going to be. And his socialist policies are destroying segments of the city as we expected it to be. He's been responsible for about 23 to 25 people that have died.
Wow.
Almost 18 of them have been homeless. 7 others were in housing, but they couldn't afford to have the heat. So he's killed a lot of people. Mind you, under any other mayor that's Republican or Democrat, in any given year, we have at a maximum about 15 people, homeless usually, that die during the winter season in New York State. 15 in a year. Mamdani's done 18 in 1 month.
Michael, can you clarify? I know you're going to be getting here. Why exactly this has happened? Is he refusing to close down these tent cities, or why the high number of homeless people dying?
Well, he made it very clear on day one. He was going to allow the homeless to live in parks and under bridges. No other mayor has done that because it's a death sentence. And every other mayor was logical enough that no matter what their policies may be, they knew if you leave homeless people out in the park with 10 inches of snow in minus 15-degree weather, people are going to die. If they're under a bridge in that same condition, they're going to die. And somehow Mamdani couldn't figure out that would be the consequence of his policy. And so people died. And that's terrifying to me. Besides the fact that his snow removal, New York State, usually New York City, normally gets about 20 inches of snow over the winter season. Yeah. We got 10. A big storm in New York City is about 1.5 feet, about 18 inches of snow. That's a storm. Having 10 inches of snow at one time is about normal. We got a normal snowstorm, minimal, 10 inches of snow. That's not enough to shut down the city. Under Mamdani, 2 weeks later, they're now using jackhammers to try and break up the ice so they can remove it. He's that far behind. He is that screwed up. That's his administration. He is completely inefficient, ineffective, and his policies, which are supposed to bring the warmth of collectivism in, have only harmed the public. It's devastating. Really, it is.
Michael, let me bring this up to you before I forget this. And it's been a couple of weeks since you've been on, but there was an incident, which I'm pretty sure you're going to be aware of, with NYPD. They got a call, and I guess it was a mental subject, and they went to the house, and the individual had a knife. I watched the video, Michael, and you can see the officers desperately trying to get away, but subsequently he does shoot the individual with the knife. The next day, your New York City mayor visits this individual. And I understand it's a mental health situation, but visits that individual with the knife. Doesn't visit, I don't believe, to my best of my knowledge, and maybe you can explain this, the NYPD officer. Michael, if you're in the NYPD right now, how would you feel about this new mayor and his rapport with him?
You would feel like what we knew they would be feeling. They're abandoned. He doesn't like them. He wants to get rid of them. He believes in defunding the police. And no matter how he reworded and reimagined his policies on the campaign trail, this is the real Zorhan Mamdani. This is the real socialism in action. They always promise you the rainbow. You always wind up living in the sewer. And that's what we're seeing. He didn't care about the police officer. He's ready to throw that police officer under a bus. The police officer was easily identified as defending himself. But Zorhan Mamdani doesn't care, because all law enforcement are bad all the time. And so that's why he went to the mentally deranged individual and is willing to comfort them. But the officers, he doesn't care. He wouldn't have cared if they died. And again, these are things that we knew were going to happen. And it's sad because they did. They are happening. And this is the first month of having him in office. Imagine what's going to happen by the time we get to the first year. How much damage can this man do?
Michael, do you see any early retirements happening in NYPD? I mean, there's got to be some talk among the rank and file that if you have a mayor that embraces the criminal element and does not embrace law and order, I mean, Michael, as you know, we're going to be heading towards spring and summer. Notoriously, crime rates go up. I can't imagine, it goes up here in Philadelphia. I'm sure it's going to be going up in New York City, particularly if you're a criminal, knowing that the mayor's got your back.
Well, yes, the warm weather always, because who wants to be out in minus 15-degree weather? Nobody, not even the criminals. Everyone's going to be home. So you can't really go in and rob someone unless you plan to physically confront them. And most criminals don't. They want the easiest target they can get. So yes, crime rates will be going up because it is going to warm up. And that is true everywhere in the world. So that's a problem. We have been seeing that police officers are less likely to join the police, new recruits. We're seeing those numbers. Literally, I know someone where I live, there's a young man, 20 years old. He's trying to get into the police. Last year, he had 20 other junior recruits that were going through the training with him this year, because he was just getting in. This year, that same program has 5.
Wow.
They lost 15 people. And that's the recruits coming in to replace all the people who took early retirements and who are just quitting and leaving, going somewhere else where they will be appreciated. The crime rates are going to continue to grow because this guy thinks a social worker is better than having a police officer in all circumstances.
Can you imagine if a social worker would have went to that call, the video that we're talking about? Can you imagine if a social worker would have turned up? That social worker would be dead by now. It's not going to work in the real world.
Do you remember we were talking about it? This is a policy that he took from Oregon and said, hey, it worked it didn't work in a city of 200,000 people in Oregon. So yeah, let's try it in New York City with 8.5 million people. It'll obviously work here. And obviously it's not.
Well, Michael, I know this is a little different subject, but you've brought it up before, but I thought I just saw before we came on that New York City tomorrow or next week is opening up its first one of those free grocery store things.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, they opened it up. It was a somewhat unexpected. It's the free market that Mamdani had promised. He had it one of the city markets. It was open for it's open this morning at 6:30. It's going to be 3 days. Basically, it's a trial run. That's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
He picked a location, trial run, 3 days, free food for everyone. That's great. And he's trying to do this because he needs a PR win. And he's going to say, see, it can work. It can work in New York. I have the right idea. Everything else I'm screwing up, but you're going to get, free groceries. And many people are saying, well, see, that's an example of when you're doing things right. People want to participate in. It's because of Orange Man bad. The prices are so bad. No, it's an example of free stuff. People will line up for free stuff. No matter what you're giving away, there'll be a line for it if it's free.
Michael, what do you know about this wealth tax that the New York City mayor is throwing around? I think the last time you told me, Michael, even if you want the wealth tax in New York City, everything has to come through Albany, right?
Yes. Yeah. It still has to come from the governor. And Kathy Hochul, sadly, is still the governor. Hopefully not after November, she'll be ending her time. But at this moment, she's still the governor of New York. And she has continued to say she's not going to increase the taxes and really, it's unrealistic to expect her to. It's an election year. No politician, it doesn't matter which party you're in, they try and do tax cuts in election years. They try to bring in new home run ideas in election years. They don't go around increasing taxes in election years if they plan to get reelected. She will be dragged kicking and screaming by the entire party before she will go and increase taxes, because it's just going to be bad for the entire party, the entire ticket all the way down. She knows it, the party knows it, and they're not going to
want 2%. Michael, is it right? He wants 2%, the wealth tax, around 2%?
Yes, 2% on on 1 million on households with 1 million in income or higher.
Michael, let's talk about the governor's race real fast. I sorry to interrupt you. We got a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Larry Sharp, he's been on my show. He's been on your show. You're a friend of yours, I think, what you said, and you're helping him on his campaign. Do you see something different happening here in this governor's race? Michael, you had a post, I think, I don't know if it was on X or somewhere, I saw that something where Hochul lost. Is it the Brooklyn Democrat? The Brooklyn Democrats, or some hierarchy there in the city where she's kind of out of touch with, and Larry's chances of success are higher than any previous attempts at run for governor. Is that true or not?
Okay. So there's a couple of components to that. Yes, the Brooklyn Democratic Party, which represents about 1.1 to 1.3 million Democrats, registered Democrats, they did, when they found out that the lieutenant governor, who is a DEI hire, she's there because she's a woman and she's black, to replace Antonio Delgado. She used to be the city council speaker of New York. She is despised. She is not liked at all. And so the Brooklyn Democrats said, no, we can't support that. They pulled their endorsement. And it is very well known that no Democrat can win a statewide election without the Brooklyn Democratic Party. It's too many Democrats. You take away a million, if as an example, if you took away 1 million votes from Hochul when she ran again, when she was competing against Lee Zeldin would have won by 500,000 votes. So it's enormous. The thing is, party politics kicked in immediately. As soon as that story hit the airwaves, they were talking back behind closed doors. Deals were made, and the endorsement was put back in place. So we almost had an advantage there for a little while. But
Michael, what about Hochul's running mate? What's the deal on her?
Adrienne Adams, now no relation to Eric Adams. Progressive, massive Democratic socialist, and not loved at all. She's not a people person. She's not even a party person, because she's not really a Democrat. She's a socialist.
Did she make the statement, Michael? Michael, did she make the statement that she would like illegals to be able to vote?
Of course, yeah. She tried it. She didn't just make the statement. She tried to pass a bill. She actually tried to
Yeah.
give the vote to illegal aliens, which is just catastrophically.
That's outrageous, man. It's outrageous.
But I wanted to go back to about the race. So I explained the answer about Hochul.
Right.
Larry Sharpe, who's a libertarian, actually joined the Republican Party so that he can run on the Republican line, because Republicans need someone who can win. Bruce Blakeman cannot win, and he's not even trying to win. He's just not. Blakeman, to give you an example, one, you go to Blakeman's website right now, and he doesn't have not even one policy position that he plans to do if he were to win, because he knows he won't. So he never even bothered to write one up.
Wow.
His lieutenant governor, his first choice, said yes. They made the public announcement. It was one of the sheriffs from upstate New York. Within 24 hours, that sheriff said, sorry, can't do it. I'm out. He rejected him after it was publicly known that he accepted. Then Blakeman came up within 12 hours and got a second lieutenant, the current lieutenant governor candidate out of Madison County, a sheriff, Sheriff Todd, as I recall, who said, yeah, I'm in for the long haul. I'll do it, which is just a sacrifice play. That was because Blakeman was embarrassed. If his running mate doesn't have the commitment to be in the race, how could he possibly win? Now, that leads us to Larry Sharpe, who's joined the Republican Party. He was seeking to have the party say, okay, we'll do a primary. Instead, Ed Cox, the leadership of the GOP, said, no, we're going to do what Democrats did with Kamala Harris. We're going to anoint a candidate. Don't give the choice to the public. We're just going to go with Blakeman. So now Larry Sharpe is going to get 15,000 Republicans to sign a petition, which will force a primary, which I think is always good. And he will debate with Blakeman and bid for the votes of Republicans. And I think Larry Sharpe, who's been to every county of New York, 62 counties, for 8 years in a row, every year, 62 counties, 8 years running. Blakeman has gone to 5 in this election. He's never been to the others. So that tells you who actually understands New York and has plans for New York State. And I think you'll see Larry Sharpe, who's already at 8% on several polls. He's been in several polls at 8% consistently. And that's higher than what he's been polling in every other election. I think that means that he, on the Republican line, having the attention, the news media, the donations that would go with that Republican line, I think he beats Hochul. You could see a race where it's going to be 55 Larry and 45 for Kathy, because she's just not well loved. No, so that answers all of your question about that.
Right. Michael, no, thanks for giving such a comprehensive answer, because New York politics is national politics with all the names you're mentioning, and it's going to be certainly an interesting race. Now, we'll get back to New York politics, or every time you're on the show, we'll devote time to it. But I want to move on to the next topic, Michael, and I didn't get a chance to tell you this before the show started. Last week, I got an invitation from CPAC to attend a combating narco-terrorism summit on the Hill. As a member of the press. And I said, okay, you don't have to ask me twice. So I went down.
I'm jealous.
So I went down last Thursday, and I'm glad I did. I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, jump on Amtrak down to DC, but it's not a bad ride here from Philly. As you probably know, Amtrak's pretty like every hour down to DC. Yeah. So anyway, I got down there, and I went into its Capitol Room 390, and they named it now the Nancy Pelosi room. So when I found that out, I almost felt like leaving, but what can you do? But I'll tell you, Michael, Sarah Carter, who's our new national drug czar, she spoke. Anna Paula Luna was there. There was a senator there. I can't remember his name. There were a lot of national security people and a lot of people from the Mexican press and a lot of Mexican government officials. Now, I want to bounce a few questions off of you, Michael. First, I'll make some of the comments on what Sarah Carter said. One of the guests said that the cartels control over 30% of the national economy in Mexico. And I've been subsequently told it's much higher than that. And also, this person that was up there, and I can't remember his name, Michael, the Mexican official, was saying that, and he wasn't saying in a positive light. He said the cartels provide a lot of employment, they provide a lot of jobs. So it would be difficult to extract them from there. My question to you, Michael, is how big of a problem are the cartels still here for America? Not just with the human trafficking, but with the drugs. Is it certainly a serious issue enough that it would warrant special operations into Mexico to try to thwart the cartels?
Okay. Two things. One, congratulations on CPAC. I wish they would offer me something like that. I'd go as well, but congratulations. That's a nice win. Two, if people notice, I just want to mention this. If people notice that I may be rocking back and forth a little bit, it's because I have a back injury. I pinched a nerve, and it's been 2 weeks, but it still hurts. But we're doing the show, period. But if people see me, a little bit wincing or something, it's because of my back pain.
Not my questioning.
No, it's not. Nothing that has to do with you at all. So that being said, let me also, so to answer your question, the cartels are a massive danger to us, and they have never been addressed. We can go back to pretty much since Reagan. We have not had a president, both Bushes, the Clintons, Obama, Biden. No one has addressed the danger they bring to America. And we've only seen the cartels increase the amount of crimes that they bring in. Yeah. Now they've moved into human trafficking, which is something that 30 years ago they really weren't touching, but now they do, as well as the drugs, as well as guns. Thank you, Obama, for bringing guns into Mexico through the failed sting operation. Yeah, I didn't forget about that. Most people did. I have not. But anyway, so we do have to do something very serious. Now, the truth of the matter is we're not going to get rid of all the cartels. You can, even if we evaporate one of the cartels, a new cartel will rise up in its place in that vacuum, and we'd still have another cartel. What we can do, though, is we can scare the hell out of them. We can smack them hard enough that they will lay really, really low until they get another weak president. Not that they will stop all their operations, but they will slow it down, and they'll get really quiet, and they'll make themselves less visible. And that means that that's a win. And that'll be lower crime, less drugs, less human trafficking, because they don't want us to really go in and destroy their operations. Every cartel wants to maintain their own power for as long as possible. So they'll all quiet down. It's the best we can do in this situation. And maybe that gives the Mexican government a chance to actually try and, I don't know, be efficient, be a real, actual government rather than just puppets of the cartels. And the problem is bigger than you think. On February 5th, a small operation of 70 individuals, basically a gang, were caught in Vermont. Now, what this gang had been doing since 2022 is they were bringing illegal aliens from Central and South America into Canada, and then coming through the northern border, which I have literally for 20 years been talking about the northern border being more open than the southern, and a bigger problem than the southern, which everyone looks at. And they were coming in through Vermont and New York State, upstate New York, to bring in sex slaves, and in particular, children as young as 5 years old.
It's disturbing.
Mainstream media didn't want to cover this. They're not talking about this. This happened February 5th. The news about it just came out 2 days ago. The mainstream media does not want to talk about this at all. You have to go overseas to find out about this. This is the consequence of the open border policies of Democrats, the inefficient government of the Biden-Harris administration, and we're getting this fixed because of Border Patrol, because of ICE and Donald Trump. And I can't see the Democrats. The reason we're not hearing about this on CNN or the New York Times, because they would have to admit that Orange Man Bad is doing something good, because they can't. I just can't see them saying, you know what, we'd rather have child slavery in America at the peak levels of the Biden-Harris administration, rather than just because they don't like Donald Trump. I just don't see them saying that, because that's just sick and evil and twisted. So their only other answer is don't talk about it.
Michael, what you revealed there, it's disturbing on so many levels, and involving children and whatnot. I have two quick questions, Michael, about what I observed at this summit. What is the level of infiltration in the Mexican government by the cartels? Is it top to bottom and in between? One. And number two, Michael, do you think U.S. politicians on this side of the border are also bought by the cartel?
It's hard to say the numbers. I mean, it's not just one cartel, it's multiple cartels.
Multiples, yes.
So, it's hard to say, because even if you find all the people from one cartel, you don't know if there's two other cartels that could be there, or influence from not even just in Mexico, but we're talking about cartels formerly from Venezuela, currently in Colombia, that also have influence there. But I would say that, given what we know about the manner in which the Mexican government deals with cartels, I'd say it's over 50%. Basically, from upper management all the way down. There may be one or two people in the top tiers of the Mexican government that actually want to do something. And once they get in, they realize, I'm the only one here who wants to actually do anything. And then they get constrained, either because they want to save their life or because they know they can't get anything done. And so that's a massive part of the problem. But if America comes in and does it, yeah, they'll say, oh, America bad. Oh, you're such a terrible person, just like they did with Maduro in Venezuela. But no one, the world stopped. They had to do their 1 week of complaining and, oh, that's so terrible, and America's a dictatorship or authoritarian or whatever the line is. And then they stopped. Why? Because they're happy. Because it was good. It actually brought more peace and more stability to the world. So they were happy. They just had to make their complaints for the news media and some of their public. They're happy about it. Same thing would happen with Mexico. You'll see them complain. All of Central and South America will complain for about a week. How could you do this? That's so terrible. Then everyone will shut up and let it go, because it's actually good for everyone. That's what I would think would happen.
Let me ask you this, Michael, about Sarah Carter, our new drug czar here in the United States. I listened to her speech intently, and I have to thank her. She reposted me right after the summit.
You're getting all the good stuff.
Michael, I've actually had a long-term rapport with Sarah Carter. She was one of the first national reporters about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, probably more, that started reposting me often and actually featuring some of my posts and keeping the top of her site. So I got to thank her for that. But let me ask you, Michael.
Introduce you to me, but to be fair, you do work very hard, so you have earned this.
Yes, as you know, I have 419,000 tweets, so I'm a monster when it comes to X. Michael, Sarah made the statement towards the latter part of her speech that she gave a warning to the cartels. She said, "Your days are numbered. We're done with you. Striking so much fear in Mexico, and to a lesser extent, maybe to here in the United States." My question to Michael Voss is, does that sound like an accurate statement? Do we have the cartels on the run, or are they still operating pretty much unabated?
They are again, it goes back to they're restricting themselves. No one has done anything to them in any significant manner at this point. It's more that rather than confronting the Trump administration, they're smarter than the Antifa and the far left in America. They don't want to confront the American government, the American military, and for the cartels, it would be the military that they would be dealing with, and not on a stand next to a police officer to be intimidating, but literally, lock and load, let's go. They don't want to deal with that. They know they can't win that fight. all they can do is endure it, if at all possible. They don't want to go through that. So rather than do that, they have stepped down their activity significantly. It's part of the reason why we see that the number of illegal aliens entering America has dropped by 95%. Part of that is the cartel saying, no, do not provoke Trump and the American government, because we're not going to like the answer. Rather, let's pull back. Still, there'll be some activity, but pull it back. We will endure this president and maybe even the next president if they're a strong president, and then they can get back to business the next time a Democrat's in.
Yes.
They'll be invited in. I mean, that's what they did under Biden-Harris. That's what we're seeing with Hochul and Zorhan Mamdani as we speak.
Michael, all well said. Let me ask you about this. I don't know if you've heard about this, but a day or two ago, El Paso Airport was shut down. It was supposed to be shut down for 10 days, but it was shut down immediately, which we haven't seen something like that in a U.S. airport since 9/11. Now, the subsequent reports I've been reading, Michael, is that the reason it was shut down is because the Mexican cartels are flying numerous drones over the border, and that it may even endanger some of our aircraft, civilian aircraft, military aircraft on our side. Are the cartels that brazen? Like, I know you had been talking about this. Are they that brazen to actually really test the U.S. as far as us, responding back?
Yeah, I didn't remember that. I thought you had me for a moment there, because I'm like, I don't remember an airport shutting down. I do know about the drones. Yes. So you get half a point there. In the quest to stump me on a topic, the drones, this is part of their step down structure. Rather than confronting more human beings, more confrontations, drones give them the opportunity to still be able to deliver drugs and even weapons without having the same human conflict. Of course, since their drones are not registered, they're flying at various heights, trying to stay out of the radar and the attention of any of the American surveillance services, whether it be an airport or military. They try and avoid that, but sometimes they're going to get in the way of a helicopter that's doing patrols or firefighting, passenger planes and such. So that threat is magnified now because they're changing their modus operandi. And that's going to continue to be the case for the next 4 years. Again, as long as we have a strong president, this is something we're going to see ramp up. It's not going to diminish. Drones have changed the world. AI is changing the world. It's changing the way we're fighting wars. It's changing the way that drugs and crime are being committed. And we haven't adjusted to that yet. As a society, as government, all around the world, we're still in the learning stage of this. And the technology is getting better.
Michael, listen,
as we're trying to learn it.
Listen, I'm glad you brought that out. That's all well said. A lot of the participants in this summit I was at on the Hill last week were asking the Mexican officials, are you willing to have a strong rapport with the Trump administration? And if that is the case, we're going to have to do a couple things here on our end, and we're going to obviously going to have to operate in your territory if we can thwart or slow down what the cartels have been doing. Now, Michael, I know I've asked you this question in the past. I just can't remember your answer. And it concerns potential blowback. What if we do move forward and we really start doing some serious damage to the various cartels? Do you think they would use some of their operatives? And Michael, let's face it, a lot of their people are embedded in U.S. cities. Could you see some type of terrorist acts where the cartel feels they're pushed into a corner and they want to strike back? Would they be stupid enough to do that?
In a manner, yes. Yes, they would. And this is different than Venezuela, which, by the way, let me admit it now because it didn't come up. You were right about Venezuela. I was wrong. I didn't think we were going to see Trump actually go in. Well, let's say we were both half right because he didn't bring in 15,000 troops, which I knew he wasn't going to do. Right. But he did bring in an elite team, a Delta Force in, grabbed Maduro and got out. So we both kind of had elements of being right there and partially wrong as well. That being said, let's look at the worst case scenario. One of the cartels is Trump is used U.S. military to bomb the poppy fields, the weed, marijuana fields, a bunch of their operatives at the border, and maybe in, say, like Aurora, Colorado, or in L.A., a lot of their gangs were shut down, being deported. They could, at a moment of desperation, what I think we would see is they would try and trigger a distraction event where there would be a riot that would be started and maybe maintained by one of their fringe gangs, like the Florencia 13, which is a component of MS-13. But most people don't know about Florencia 13. Small gang, well, mid-sized gang, more regional in California, Southern California, but yet still part of MS-13. They would use someone like that to maybe start a riot. And we know that they're willing to, because the Florencia 13 were actually hired or attempted to be hired by the vice mayor. I forget the name of the city now, in Southern California. They actually used them to attack ICE. They were the ones who started the rioting in California last year, 2025.
Right.
So you'd see something like that, and they would probably try and make themselves seem like one of the other cartels to take the heat off of themselves, push it onto someone else so that they can recoup. And you would see these riots happening in several cities where that one of the cartels may have had control to try and distract.
Yeah, Michael, it gets very convoluted here, what you're describing, and I'm glad you let the audience know that. I do want to say this, and we're going to have to move on to our next subject. I got a follow-up email about this Combating Narco Terrorism Summit from CPAC, and they said that this conversation will continue next month. Mm-hmm. They're having a CPAC event in Dallas, the annual one, which I will also be attending live with press credentials. And I believe, Michael, if you get a chance, maybe we can, when I'm in Dallas, we can do a little mini, video here of what's going on there, which would be great too. I'm looking forward to that. It appears the Trump administration via Sarah Carter, and you know what, Michael, there was a lot of, she passed 58 to 42 in her confirmation back in January. A lot of people are saying like, oh, she has no government experience. There's no national security experience. I looked at her credentials and her resumes and some of her books and where she's covered. She's been very deeply involved behind the scenes, investigations and whatnot with the Mexican cartels. I mean, from an outside government perspective. So I actually think that she brings a fresh perspective to this really enormous problem. And I think, Michael, and I know you've spoke about it eloquently, that when you have billions of dollars at your disposal, which clearly the cartels have, hey man, that goes a long way. And there's money and talks, bullshit walks.
They buy a lot of local, state, and likely federal individuals. Corruption goes pretty far. When you've got the billions, all you need are a handful of corrupt individuals to give you a hole in the fence, or the cameras will be off for maintenance for the next 3 hours. Go at it,
right?
Things like that. So that is the corruption. But that's part of the reason why we need someone who's not a government functionary. We don't need people who've been in the current government system and the current government corruption for the last 2 decades, where we saw nothing get accomplished. We need some new, fresh blood, whether it's someone who's elected into office to replace the old people who've been there for too long, or new people in the various secretarial positions, heads of departments, that are bringing in another point of view and are willing to be accountable. They're willing to take the risk because they have a career outside of the government that they can go back to, which is part of the reason why no one's supposed to have a career as a politician. You're supposed to go back to your life, which reduces the amount of corruption, which makes you more effective because you have a goal and you can attain it. So I'm glad that Sarah Carr is doing that, taking the risk, Some of the things she's going to do, she's going to screw up. Some things she's going to be very effective. One thing for sure, she's going to be more efficient and more effective and have more momentum than everyone who's been doing this for the last 3 decades.
She's not a swamp creature, Michael. She's not a
Exactly.
swamp creature.
Exactly.
And Michael, listen, man, I am glad that you went in that direction with my friend Sarah Carter there. Although, you can speak your mind on anything, but I think you're absolutely right, Michael. It's somebody that has stepped out of it. She's not oblivious to what's going on. In fact, that's what she's been doing for the last couple of decades as far as investigative journalism, and she's done a great job at that. I just hope there could be some inroads made in it, because obviously the damage that fentanyl and heroin have done to our country is unbelievable. If I may add, Michael, on a personal note, as you probably know, in my previous life, I was a transit official, but I did many, many investigations. And one of the saddest things, Michael, were young people, late teens, early 20s, getting on a vehicle and dying by the time the train got to the end of the line from overdosing. And sometimes the people were older, 30, 40s, 50s, 60s. You'd be surprised. So this drug thing, the fentanyl and heroin, it's a horrible, horrible problem. In fact, they did have families there, Michael, at this summit that were talking about their individual cases, where they had loved ones die from the overdoses. Very tragic. And I'm glad that finally we're really putting, a big spotlight on this, and we really have to address it. Michael, not just the cartel issue, but what happens here with treatment, and why are we such big consumers of these narcotics?
Well, I think part of the reasons why we're such big consumers is it's part of the culture. It's part of the indoctrination. We've, since the 1990s, with what used to be called gangster rap, which is now just the rap industry, we saw a glorification of drug dealing. And since the 60s, we had the whole hippie movement, which is also a glorification of drugs.
Right.
So we had drugs and violence that were being glorified through several generations and being embedded into America. We've had ineffective government and ineffective policies for decades. And, we started with, I think really the problem started with Bill Clinton when he's there. Oh, I smoked, but I didn't inhale.
Right.
Even if I'm not presuming any president is an angel. They aren't. Okay. You get into big top line politics. There are no angels out there. They're all egomaniacs. They're all individuals with, megalomania, every single one of them, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be able to handle the pressure of the job. So I get that. But he was the first one who normalized the idea publicly. He made it something that, this is not to be demonized. It's not something in the shadows. It's something everyone can, and for the left, everyone should do. And that's how we get to where we are today, where we see it's considered normal. Now we have dispensaries. The states are making money off of selling drugs to the public. And believe it or not, it was the former governor of California, Governor Brown, a Democrat, who said he was against the legalizing marijuana. And when he was asked why, he says, well, everyone can't be high. Somebody's got to run everything. And I thought that was a wonderful answer and absolutely remarkable for a Democrat to be saying it, but he's right. And now we have made it normalized. We have made it available, and no one can run anything anymore.
Michael, let me interrupt you here for a second. The slippery slope here, the legalization of marijuana across our country, and then in cities like Denver, where you have the legalization of hallucinogenics, where people are tripping their brains out in these parks, besides just being high from smoking dope. I know I'm going to be showing my age here, but tell me how it benefits any society to legalize, whether it be the hallucinogenics or the marijuana. How does that benefit society as a whole?
It doesn't. And that's why we saw, I believe it was in Washington State, where they legalized all drugs. And then about 6 months later, they repealed that decision because it doesn't work. The libertarian utopia of free, everyone can use any drug they want and it'll be okay because it's not going to hurt anyone. They're wrong. It doesn't, that utopia doesn't exist. Everyone gets harmed, productivity goes down, crime goes up, the burden on society increases. It's a complete failure every time it's been tested. And that's the problem, because we've normalized it so much that everyone just goes, yeah, but they did something wrong. It's kind of like socialism. Oh, yeah, but this time we'll get it right. This time we'll legalize the drugs and people will react different than they've reacted every other time through the history of mankind. It's not going to change. Drugs affect you in a negative aspect. And when I say you, maybe not any one individual, but when you talk about a city, when you talk about a county, when you talk about a state, when you talk about a nation, yes, it does. And we really need to get a handle on this before we get to the point where China, when Mao took over China, there was, I believe the number was somewhere around 75% of China was addicted to opium.
Wow.
And his answer to that was, okay, we're going to round up all of the drug dealers and all of the drug addicts, everyone who's hooked on opium or selling opium, and kill them in the town square on every public television. And we will just have hours and hours and hours of killing all of them, with the message going out, if you use drugs, this is going to happen to you.
Right.
And there were no excuses. There were no appeals. No one cared how terrible your life was. If you're taking opium, if you're selling opium, you're going to be killed in the middle of the park
square
on TV. And it worked. It worked. Pretty horrific, but it is, if you let your society, you let your country get subsumed by these drugs, that's the answer.
No, I agree.
It may not be the American government making that answer. It may not be here.
I'm glad you brought up the Mao thing here, Michael. But look, here's the issue, and I'll bounce this off Michael Voss. If this is a tax-generating revenue for the state, then this is going to be an uphill climb to actually decrease it or pull it back, not just on marijuana, but again, like I said, hallucinogenics and potentially cocaine.
And heroin and every drug you can imagine, because eventually we're going to include every drug. Just like we've already seen the experiment. And they're going to say, well, it failed in Washington State, but they didn't do it quite right.
Right.
And so they're going to try it again, and they're going to try it again. And it will become normalized, and people will say, you'll see the far left go, it's your right. Because if you're on drugs, you're very compliant and you're very subservient because you want that next drug. You want that next hit. And if the government's the one who's being your dealer, well, you have to vote the way they want you to. You will do what they say so that you will get that next drug hit. So it's exchange of power for enslavement, literally. So that's the problem with where it goes. But the other problem is the longer that we do this, the harder it is to get rid of it. I mean, how long have we had any department of the government in our lifetimes, which is more than half a century? Let's just say around there, more than half a century. We don't have to be exact. Not one department of the government has ever been shut down or decreased until we had U.S. aid. So we're talking half a century, legitimately, you could say an entire century until we got to 2025. Not one division or department or agency of the government has ever gotten smaller. They've always gotten bigger. More money, more people, more power, more of the entire cycle. The vortex going down, down, down.
I agree. Yes.
So, and now put that same concept into drugs. And every time that system, that cycle goes around and it gets bigger, well, that means that there are more people who cannot take care of themselves. They can only be slaves to the drug, and the dealer is the government, which is gaining more power and more money for every one of those slaves.
Michael, let me ask you a question. Why is the tax revenue always have to be something that's detrimental to humanity? And what do I mean by that? Whether it be the tax revenue generated from drugs or casinos. Okay. More and more casinos are being built everywhere. So these things aren't helping humanity. they seem to be. I mean, there's a lot to be said, Michael, that sometimes gambling comes in and destroys communities because you'll start having stuff, residual effects like prostitution in the area, higher crime, robberies, thefts, people losing their houses, suicides. So between legalizing drugs and putting casino at every corner, it seems like we're against the wall here in the United States.
Well, it's because we believe the stupid idea. Again, it's just like with socialism. Well, we'll do it different and it'll work this time. Never works. I remember when New York was first considering Prop 1, which was to create government or introduce casinos in New York State. That was under Andrew Cuomo. And it was Proposition 1. And I remember I was writing several articles, and I was on WBNG, WUTQ. These are talk radio stations and news in the southern tier of central New York. And I said, if you look at the data, this never works. These things, every one of these casinos will fail. The communities will fail. And no one will prosper. And they're like, no, but we're going to make all this money for education and we'll have more tourism coming in and communities will do great. And I always have to say to everyone who thinks about casinos and like, we're going to add 3 more casinos in New York City, which is going to be devastating. It's going to crush the city. Why? The answer is real simple. How do casinos make money? Do you know, Matt?
Well, obviously people losing, but alcohol, drinks too?
No. You got it right the first time. They take money from the community. It is a zero-sum game. The money goes into the casino. If a casino is losing money, you're keeping your money. That's think of it as not just an individual. Think of it as a county and a state. The money isn't going into the casino for their profits. It's staying in the community. But if the community, you have that casino, the house always wins. The longer you go, the more money goes into that casino that doesn't go back into the community. Oh, sure, they'll take 1% off the top, but they're keeping 99%. You're not getting back what you're putting in. Otherwise, the casino would fail.
Michael, do you know, and this is pertinent to what we're discussing, do you know who got the licenses for the 3 casinos in New York City?
I did, and I have forgotten.
No, would it be? Are they major players, like as far as MGM or something like that, or are they like rich politicians that got it, or billionaires?
Rich private conglomerations. It's not one business, but several businesses together put their money together and own it. It's not one of the big names, because the big names, it's not good for them. They're going to lose money faster. There's a reason why Atlantic City and Las Vegas were the only 2 spots for a long time. And why the casinos in both Atlantic City and Las Vegas, there is a fixed number. If you add another casino in either of those places, some other casino has to close.
Yes.
They've reached saturation. They know how to balance that out. And they have the conversations amongst all of the different casinos about what they're, not just who gets to have a casino, but what type of casino it's going to be and what is it going to try and target. And that's a conversation they have before any brick even comes down. So everybody knows what they're dealing with, because they know if they go over those deal breakers, everybody loses. The state, that all of the casinos, everyone loses. There is no equilibrium in New York State, and we don't understand the impact long term, because every time someone says, well, look at it, every time we have one of these casinos, we had 4 casinos before, we're going to add 3 more, but what about the 4 casinos that were authorized under Proposition 1 under Andrew Cuomo? 3 of them are going bankrupt right now. 3. There's only 1 that's barely breaking even. The other 3 are complete failures.
Michael, let me ask you a quick question. Mm-hmm. It's going to sound like a Hollywood question. Do you think organized crime is involved in A, the casino business, or B, now the legal drug business? Do you think on the periphery, organized crime still operating? Like, say, for example, the Mexican cartels with the cannabis distributors in the United States. Do you think they're on the periphery, or they're silent partners, or what?
Well, mafias and gangs of that nature still exist. They are diversified. We know cartels do human trafficking because it's far more profitable, but they do that and they do drugs and they do various other crimes.
Right.
And so, yeah, they exist and they're involved in everything. You're seeing them. They've always been involved, but they've always been involved in like sanitation. They've always been involved in entertainment. Uh, and they never stopped being that. They just lowered their profile because they were too popular, say in the 70s, late 70s, mid 80s. They were so popular that they were out in the daylight and they were getting caught. It was bad for business to be known. They were too big, too involved. So they just got quiet. They didn't go away.
Right.
The mafia still exists. Cartels still exist. All of that still exists. They just learned how to diversify a little bit more and how to be a lot more quiet about what they do.
No, I got you. I got you. Now, Michael, listen, that is a very interesting topic. I'm glad we spent some time on that between the drugs and the casinos. But Michael, let's move on to some national issues here.
Mm-hmm.
I got to ask Michael Voss, why are we looking at another shutdown tomorrow night or Saturday, whenever it's going to have a partial shutdown? Why are we still, why at this point, after the 42-day shutdown a few months ago, why are we back in the same thing again?
Okay, we've actually been in a partial shutdown already. That was at the end of January. So, but it was not well publicized, and it's not affecting every part of the government all at once. They've staged it so that everything doesn't collapse all at once because of what happened the 42 days that we had the government shut down. They didn't want to have that happen again. It would be devastating for the nation and every party. And people would want to get rid of all of them instead of just getting rid of some of them. So that's why we're seeing this happen in stages, and DHS and different departments are shutting down, which is bad for everyone. It's bad for the entire country. But Democrats think that this is a winning strategy. They knew, they were planning, that we saw the documents during the last shutdown, the Schumer shutdown. We had documentation from Democrats that they were already planning to shut down the government again at the beginning of 2026, which they have done. This is a strategy for them to try and win the midterm elections. What they're going to try and do, as they are doing right now, they got lucky. ICE, the protesters, the agitators, the criminals on the far left were stupid, put themselves into the worst position possible, and then made every wrong decision you could possibly make, and they died as a result. I'm talking about Renee Good. I'm talking about Alex Preddy. They were stupid. They made every wrong decision you could possibly make. It cost them their lives. But the left loved it. That gave them the excuse to shut down the government because they didn't know. If you notice, in mid-January, they were putting out all kinds of feelers and flyers about how bad Trump was, but nothing was sticking, not enough to be able to say, well, we're not going to vote to keep the government open. They were going to look bad if they did that. And then they got the Minnesota situation, which blew up. And really, we should be talking about Minnesota and the Somali, not just the Somali.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
But we've distracted from that, and they're looking at ICE and immigration, and that's a reason why they can shut down the government, and they're going to use that as an excuse to try and get popularity so that they can try and take back the Congress and the Senate. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's what they're going to try and do, and that's why we're going through this again.
Michael,
has nothing to do with
Mike. Let me get this out to the audience real quick. Yeah. If you're just joining us, Michael Voss has joined us tonight, and we are live on YouTube, Rumble, and X. Michael, what I want to get out to the audience, if we can, if you want to expand on this, particularly the question I asked a few minutes ago, which I know you're getting to, but what exactly is going to be affected? I have, as far as not getting paid, the Secret Service, FEMA, the Coast Guard, TSA. Are they the direct effects? Because a lot of these dopey Democrats think that the funding for ICE and whatnot is all cut off, but apparently they've been funded. They're going to be funded for quite some time into the future, but there are going to be departments that are going to be affected. Do you know any more than that? The several ones I mentioned, will it be affecting other federal institutions?
Well, think of anything that the DOJ, it's through the DHS, anything that deals with the Department of Homeland Security, which would be most of the law agencies. Now, one of the ones I don't really love is the ATF. They would be affected as well. But you're also looking at, to an extent, I believe, the FDA, the FAA, and a few other organizations that deal with healthcare and regulations that we need.
Social Security? Social Security?
No.
Staffing, not the checks.
No,
Okay.
That's a different department. But that would probably, if one part of the government is shut down, it's a domino. Everything is built to be interconnected and interrelated, interdependent. So if you take out one of the legs, our government doesn't run without that leg. Everything else fails at some point. It's just, it doesn't happen all at once like a regular shutdown. It'll be staggered. So we're going to stumble as we start losing the legs of the government, as each part starts failing on its own, and the shutdown grows in its size and impact. It'll buy Democrats at least 45 to 60 days before it would be devastating enough to be back where we were in November 2025, where people aren't getting their food stamps.
So Michael, just to understand you, the blowback is going to be on the Democrats, not the Republicans.
Probably. It's going to start on the Republicans because they're going to put this on the backs of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pretty. Just like George Floyd was the reason why we had the riots, the BLM riots in 2020. They tried to put this all on theirs. That's their excuse. That's the umbrella everything's going to try and fit under. The problem is it doesn't work because we're talking about all of the illegal immigration. That means you're talking about drug cartels. You're talking about human trafficking. You're talking about all of those negatives and all of the problems with illegal immigration. The border would wind up opening up. More people would come in that gap of our coverage of our security for our nation, which means that the pressure on Chicago, LA, Houston, New York, Boston, Portland, Seattle, that would be coming back in levels that we saw under the Biden-Harris administration, which was breaking each and every one of those cities. Every one of their mayors told you.
Michael, let me just ask you something. You may have said this a few minutes ago, Michael. Was it a stupid idea for the Republicans to agree to this 2-week extension so the Democrats can take their shots at ICE? Was this a dumb move by the Republicans?
It was going to happen no matter what. It was going to happen no matter what. They're going to continue. The first, probably most of the first month is all going to be about, well, Trump is an authoritarian. ICE aren't legal. Illegal immigration doesn't exist because open borders, blah, 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 stupid idea, pixie dust and, rainbows and all that crap. That's what they're going to go with. And from there, they're then going to say, well, not only do we have to shrink law enforcement, which is defunding the police, they're back to that because they never left it. They're just renaming it. Oh, we've got to shrink ICE. It means you want to defund the police. And it means you want open borders. And it means that you don't mind having more illegal aliens. And so now they get to talk about illegal immigration, and they get to try and say, well, they're human beings like anyone else, and they deserve everything, and we have to give them more rights, which means we have to give them a path to citizenship. We have to give them more support in terms of, prepaid credit cards with $50,000 on each credit card. So the illegal alien can live in America off of taxpayer dollars, while our taxpayers, some of them are living in the streets homeless. It makes no sense, but they're going to put it into that package. And they're starting with, because we're doing this for Renee Good. We're doing this for Alex Pretty. We support them. We love them. This is for them. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's a wonderful excuse. Some people will buy into it if they have no idea what they're talking about. But if you actually pay any attention to this, it has nothing to do with them. This is about power. That's all it's about. power and election. And this is the way to get more power for Democrats.
Michael, listen, I agree, and I'm just going to go over to this is on the periphery of it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this, which has really pissed me off for the last couple of weeks. And particularly, I'm seeing here in Philadelphia, but it's across the nation. Michael, I'm seeing hundreds and hundreds of grade school, mainly high school students, but some grade school students that are actively protesting against ICE. They've got all the signs made up. The school principals, administrators are just kind of like, well, kids are going to be kids. What kind of generation is growing up now? And Michael, as you know, this is across the country, where these school administrators are letting the kids say, you know what? Don't believe in law and order. Do not believe in law and order. In fact, these ICE guys, they're murderers and they're kidnappers. What kind of message are these dopey, mostly Democrat-aligned school administrators, you know, the unions, the teacher unions, what are they trying to instill on our youth? And how damaging, Michael, is that for our future?
Well, it is part of the institutionalization, the indoctrination of our youth. These kids, they're not doing this because they have this opinion. There is no 15-year-old in America that is trying to figure out illegal immigration. I'm sorry. No,
I agree.
It's not a concept in their minds. That is something that has been implanted in them by their teachers, the unions, the administrators have pushed that into the kids' minds, and their parents have also been like all for it. And that's why we see this, because normal kids don't think about that. They're maybe trying to figure out, do I want to date Susie or do I want to date Jill? That's what they're thinking about.
It's a valid point, Michael. You're right.
Or do I want to be in the basketball team, baseball team? You know, stupid things like that. But that's important at that age. They're not trying to fix the world. We got to get world peace. They're not thinking about that. So let's remove that illusion, which makes it seem nice that children are being indoctrinated and they're being programmed for the benefit of a partisan ideology. Whether you like that ideology or not, I don't care. This is what they are effectively doing. The long-term impact of that are children who cannot compete in the world. They cannot critically think for themselves. They are dependent. They are slaves to the government, and in particular, a certain ideology that has made them their foundation of power. This is absolutely devastating for our kids. I'm
Michael,
really upset about that.
Michael, I know. Listen, man, I know that was going to piss you off. It certainly still pisses me off. They're not even waiting, Michael, until they get into the university college level. They're trying to get them as young as possible. I saw something on the Daily Mail, and I hope it was wrong what I was seeing, but some of these kids look like they were first or second graders with the anti-ICE signs. Again, this is disturbing at so many levels. And one thinks, Michael, when the Democrats get back in the White House, or let's face it, there's a potential that they can, they could win the midterms. What do you think it's going to look like when Hakeem Jeffries gets the gavel back? What do you think is going to be happening as soon as he gets that?
Oh God, he's going to try and reinstill all of the socialist ideology that we've seen removed. And by the way, the Democratic Party is becoming more and more and more. They used to only be about 7%. The radical DSA, progressive socialist wing, used to be about 7%. Within the last 3 to 5 years, they're now 21% of Democrat Party. The Democratic Party is becoming the Socialist Party of America. And most people haven't noticed it because, again, you're not going to hear that from the news media or entertainment. They went to the college, got indoctrinated, and now they're pushing their ideology through their new jobs, bringing in all of their friends that believe the same things they believe because they're all trapped in a blue sky bubble that they never get out of. Anyone outside of that bubble is racist and sexist. They're an islamophobe and evil and terrible because I don't agree. I believe that there are borders. And I do think that having illegal aliens in our country is a bad thing because what do we get? Like what we saw on February 5th. We have small gangs that are bringing in women and children to become sex slaves in America.
Yeah.
That's a direct consequence. You have the one that creates the other. They're interconnected. And I want to have a closed border. I don't want children or women being sold as sex slaves in my country. I'm sorry, I don't think most countries would want that. But the left never makes that connection. All they hear is open border. That's good. It's a nice thing to do. I want to support that because that's all they've been told. No one in the media or entertainment or politicians are talking about, and here's the consequence. By the way, yeah, you got your open border. And by the way, the amount of women and children being sold as sex slaves in America went up 500%.
Yeah.
Do you feel good now? No one ever says that. I do.
What I guess I'm trying to say, Michael, is that you know, I'm very concerned about the future of America. I'm glad President Trump's in there. He's doing a lot of good things, but I got to call balls and strikes. Some things I don't like what he's doing internationally. But
1 minute, there's something else about that. There is no 5-year-old that is trying to figure out whether America should have an open border or not.
You saw that in the chat, huh?
No, I didn't. I don't.
Yeah, it says there were kindergartners, and I thought I saw that too. There were kindergartners holding signs in that classroom. That's from Dan.
You can't be surprised.
He's watching the show closely. Well, I mean, Michael, how bad is that?
How bad is that? Bad. Think about it. We already know that this is happening to our kids in kindergarten and preschool because we saw that in 2020, 2021, 2022 with the lockdowns. And parents were suddenly introduced. Their kids are being taught every day. Everyone said, no, get this out of my kids. Get it out of the classroom. Stop teaching my kids these things. Stop giving them pornographic books and saying it's educational material. You know, they should know that, you know, Bob used to have breasts and got them cut off, and that Joe is having sex with another guy named Joe. That's not something for kindergartners, but it's great for indoctrination. And the long-term impact is we have kids. Why is our, as a nation, our birth rate, the birth rate of the nation is actually below sustainable levels? That's dangerous. That's going to destroy our country. We cannot continue to operate at the quality of life that we have right now, at the safety level that we have right now. But we're teaching our kids that they have infinite genders and to never have any children, and abortion is suddenly a virtue out of somewhere. And that's not how a society builds. That's how a society crumbles. They're not talking about that long term. 99% of trans individuals. Let's talk about that for a second, real quick. On the kids level, you're an adult. I don't care what you do. That's your body. Do what you want with it. Don't ask me for money. Do not beg my money and use my money for your personal preferences, your feelings, your cosmetic choices in your life. Don't do that. And don't tell me I have to call you anything. No, I have freedom of speech. I'll call you whatever I want. I might want to use your pronouns. I don't have to, because your pronouns aren't English language. So screw that. But no, we're talking about the children, and we're talking about gender affirmation. And we are seeing consistently that even if 99% of all the kids that are getting the gender affirmation and cutting off their genitals and chemically castrating themselves so they will die off because they cannot procreate. Well, here's the other part of the problem. That 1%, they turn into like that kid at Tumbler Ridge in Canada yesterday, well, a day and a half ago, where she killed her mom, killed her brother, who was 11 years old, went to the high school, shot 9 other students, and 25 others were shot and injured. They had 10 dead and 25 injured because this trans kid at 12, gender affirmation in Canada, the net result, that kid was confused, was pissed off. The promise that they made about the gender affirmation did not come true. They were angry at the world, and then they snapped, and people died.
Well, Michael, this is obviously
over and over again.
Look, man, we're looking at what, a dozen tranny shooters in the last 2 years in North America. When you have the captain of the police force and the prime minister of Canada and other officials in that province talking about she. And I know you're referring to she, where clearly it was a male. I saw all the photos of the male with weapons, some rifles, and clearly looked like a male to me. And pushing this as hard as they can. Your point is well taken, Michael, when you said freedom of speech, and I don't have to acknowledge your pronouns. I can if I want to, but I don't have to. But the sad thing is, Michael, as you know, I think there's a couple of states, or maybe it's California. I know it's happening over in Europe, where you will be fined or in prison for 6 months if you misgender someone. So yeah, we have to take it seriously. I don't want to participate in their madness either. And I'm glad you stressed that point.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the UK specifically, where they've thrown people literally in jail for using a word in a tweet, and people have been fined $50,000 or 2 years in jail. There are gangs, members, people who've been killed, stabbed to death in England, and they didn't spend 2 years in jail. But you put the wrong tweet out there, you're going to go to jail for 2 years. Murderers don't get treated like that. And I know that in California, and again, it's all the blue states. It's all the bluer states and all of the progressive colleges. They've been trying to institute language control. And the reason why they do that, by the way, people always wonder about why do they do that? Why is that the case? It's real simple. Language is a function of thought. The more words you know, the better a conversation you can have. The more things that are in your head you can explain to someone else, and they will be able to get it if they understand those words. So if you have a larger vocabulary, you can talk about and expand an idea. That's how we get discoveries. That's how things are made and the society advances, because we can take the ideas in some of the greatest minds and even mediocre minds, and we can take those ideas in their heads and give it to someone, and someone can work with it and develop from there. At the same time, if I take away those words, if I limit what you can say, I limit what you can think, and then you become a slave. You're easier to control.
Control the language, control the country.
Yeah, that is the consequence. That is, again, I talk a lot about long-term consequences. The mainstream news media, most politicians, they're talking about what's going to happen next Tuesday. I don't care.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Speaking about next Tuesday, Michael, if we can move on here,
sure.
I'm looking at the potential for the SAVE Act to pass. And according to sources there on the Hill, they've got 48 or 49 senators to go, but I believe they need 60 to get that passed. And also, Michael, and this is just an observation, many are saying the John Thunes of the world aren't exactly helping this situation. They're kind of dragging their feet. What are your thoughts on that?
A lot of Republicans and all the Democrats essentially are dragging their feet on the SAVE Act, because the left have been very effective or amongst their own at the very least, but they've been effective at trying to tie sexism and racism to the SAVE Act. Right. And Republicans are, I don't know why, they're just being stupid. I yelled at the RNC, the GOP, today in a tweet, because they're like, oh, this SAVE Act, it's going to be so wonderful. I'm like, why aren't you telling people they are being lied to? I'll give you a great example. Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, who was also one of my senators from New York, he said he's been saying consistently now for about a week that the SAVE Act will take away the vote for 21 million Americans. That is a lie. That is an absolute factual lie. And he didn't think anyone would fact check him. He didn't think anyone would find out what his source was, which he never mentioned. Here is his source. It's the Brennan Center, on July 11th, 2025, their report, which said that 21 million Americans, if you have voter ID, 21 million Americans would have difficulty finding their ID. Not that they don't have an ID, not that they couldn't vote, but what that essentially means is, oh, my ID, whether it's a state ID, a military ID, a passport, I left that in my desk in my house. It's in with my luggage for when I'm going to go somewhere. I don't have it with me right this second. That's difficulty of access. That's 21 million Americans. That's true every day. You know how many Americans actually don't have access, wouldn't be able to register to vote if the SAVE Act is passed? Because we have that number, again, from the very same Brennan report that is being misquoted by Chuck Schumer. The number is 3.8 million people. How many people is that? 1.5% of all the voters. 1.5%. 3.8 million people. That's it.
Michael, what was the case they're making about, oh, well, married women changing their name, they're going to have a difficult time voting. Okay. They haven't changed their name and all this crap.
Well, that's the sexism part. Let's deal with the racism because it's real simple. This is not Jim Crow. It's not even close to Jim Crow. And anyone who is over the age of 30 knows this has nothing to do with Jim Crow. But they're trying to get to the 18-year-olds who don't know anything, so they think this is the worst racism that has ever existed in life because it's the only thing they've ever known. It's not. As someone who's older than 15 minutes, I can tell you, racism used to be a lot worse. Things used to be a lot more difficult. And my parents was even worse for them because they had to deal with Jim Crow. This is maybe an inconvenience for some people, not specifically because they're Black. It's just life. By the way, if you think this is a race issue, that it's about Black people, then you're calling Black people incapable of being able to get an ID or to operate a computer. It is the most insulting, racist thing you could possibly say. So let's stop saying that because it's stupid. In terms of women, there are over 69, you know why they say 69 million? There are 69 million women. Actually, I've seen numbers around 72, but whatever, we'll go with their number. 69 million women who are already married. Those women changed their social security, their driver's licenses.
Yes.
They changed their IDs already, whether it's a hyphen or changing it to the husband's name. They're already making those changes. They can do that because, again, just like with Black people, are you telling me that women are too infantile to be able to change the name on their ID? And if they are, then they shouldn't be voting in the first place. But let's be realistic. They can, they do, they have been doing this for over the 200 years of America, 250 years of America. This isn't a new process.
Michael,
so, yes,
listen,
they can do this.
They're insulting their own constituents then. So
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
and
they're telling all of the women
it?
in the Democratic Party that they are infantile and they have to be handled like they're 5 years old because they can't do anything on their own, like change the name on their ID if they get married, which is part of the reason why they're saying don't get married. This is what they're teaching them.
I know
and
this is
so
it's insane. Now, Michael, listen.
I'll tell you why. Do you know why they're doing this?
Yeah.
That's something that no one talks about. The reason why they're doing this is you open the borders, illegal aliens come in. The census under Joe Biden, under Democrats, they count the illegal aliens. So even though New York is losing about 250,000 citizens are leaving New York State every year for over a decade now, which means we're losing members of the House of Representatives. We're losing power in Congress. So they bring in the illegal aliens. That makes it, instead of losing 300,000 citizens in a year, it'll only show that the population dropped by about 50,000. So they get to keep their members of Congress. Let's go a little bit further with this. So that's about that part of the power in terms of votes. Now, you also have, like, the lieutenant governor pick by Kathy Hochul, that's the Adrian Adams, who wants to give illegal aliens the right to vote. This has also happened in California. They give them the right to vote. Some of those votes, they accidentally get automatically, when they go and get their driver's licenses, the illegal aliens that are now in the country because of the open border, well, those illegal aliens are accidentally going to be registered to vote. Let's assume it's only 1%. That means under Joe Biden, 8 million came in. That means there's about 80,000 illegal aliens voting in elections. I have 80,000 votes. I can take over any local race, any state race, probably, and depending on which state it is, I may be able to control congressional races and or the presidential race. That's how many votes it is. It's more than enough. And that's assuming it's only 1%. And we all know that's not what's happening. The government's far too inefficient. It's probably closer to 20%. You can take over the presidency with those additional votes that shouldn't exist. So that brings us to, okay, now we know why they want open borders. Now we know how it maintains the power. We can see how that's going to change the elections. And none of these states, especially the bluer than blue states, none of them do audits. So we don't know the voter rolls. We don't know if a dead person's voting 5 or 10 times unless somebody does a study.
Michael, is that part of the FBI investigation in Fulton County 2 weeks ago when they pulled over 500,000 votes and they are finding anomalies fucking everywhere?
Well, they've already, I believe it was Georgia, Fulton County, that admitted that over 300, I think it was 312,000 mail-in ballots were, according to existing law, illegal. They were invalid, and they were counted in the 2020 election, even though Georgia state law at the time said they couldn't count them.
Right.
And they did. Now, that's the state of Georgia admitted that in a court of law. That's not Donald Trump. That's not Republican Party. That's a fact. 300,000 votes. That state, I believe, went to Biden by about 15,000 votes, if I remember correctly.
You're right.
And there's 300,000 that we know that were illegal and should not have been counted. No matter how you do the math, Joe Biden loses that state.
Michael, Georgia, Pennsylvania, we can go on and on as far as the anomalies. And then we had, of course, obviously judges that didn't give a shit either. We're counting ballots here in the Commonwealth 2-3 weeks later. It's extensive. And the 2020 election, as far as when Bannon goes on and on about it, I think he's certainly got a point there that if you don't resolve or look into what happened in 2020, we are doomed to repeat something like that again. So yeah, we do have to examine what happened in 2020.
But you notice I've now connected all the little dots.
Yes.
That everyone, the mainstream news media only talks about these things as individual stories, not connected to any other aspect of this. And they only spend about a minute and a half on the average news program. They never go into any of what it took me 5 minutes, 7 minutes on the very simple, basic level of explaining how these things all connect and how it leads to more power for Democrats and progressives. And these are all factual things that are happening.
Michael, listen, you're preaching the choir. I'm glad you laid that out for the MatthewJ Show audience, because yes, you didn't need a lot. You don't need the whole 30 or 60 minute, NBC program say, well, this is what's happening. No, Michael, the legacy media depends on the average American having about a 30-second attention span. And they don't want to get into it. Oh, that election was 2020 or this happened in 2024. I don't really care about it. Well, Michael, listen, that's very important. But as you know, we have a few more things to get to. And I want to ask you about this. Okay. A couple days ago, Pam Bondi went up on the Hill and was testifying. And the Democrats were just trying to put her over a barrel. I'm not saying she did great or she did bad. Some of the only things I could see if I was a neutral observer is Michael, these Epstein files and the whole Epstein situation, it keeps going on and on and on. And I know what Trump's saying and other people saying, hey, listen, if this was so bad, why didn't Merrick Garland and the Biden regime, why didn't they, if they thought it was going to be that damaging to Trump or Republicans in general and top players like Bannon and whatnot, why wasn't it released then? So I'm with them there. But my question to Michael Voss is Pam Bondi up to the job? Was she doing well or not? I'm just want your opinion on her.
No, she should actually be fired. Not because she's a bad person. I don't think that's the case. I don't think she's actively trying to screw over the government or the American people. I just don't think she's effective enough at this level. Maybe she shouldn't be the secretary. Maybe she should be an undersecretary, a couple of steps down, because she can't seem to manage on multiple different issues effectively at the top of the pyramid of the government. It seems to be overwhelming to her, and she's not capable. She should have been saying from day one, by the way, not only did the Democrats have the opportunity, and many would say the obligation, to provide all this information about Epstein, and they had all the power. No one tried to stop them. They didn't even try and bring it up. Trump has promised it. He is, they try and demonize the Trump administration. Trump has always said, yeah, get the information. Yes, you can.
I agree with you, Michael. It's the optics that Democrats are running on. This is the only thing I would say also in addition to that, Mike, as far as Pam Bondi, and I kind of concur with you. I think she's in over her head. Maybe she was okay as a Florida attorney general, but this is way too big with her in the swamp. I think one of her biggest mistakes, Michael, was in the first 2 weeks of the administration last year. She got the 10 top conservative people, Scott Pressler, Jack Posobiec, got them all to the White House. Said, here's your folders. We're going heavy and hard against Epstein. We got this. What happened within a week or two? Trump said it's a nothing burger. It's just a Democrat plot. We're going to move on. The optics on that, Michael, were horrible. And she really effed up there, man.
Well, that's because Trump's reacting to what she presented, which is what we already had, because she screwed up in the first place. She didn't get the actual documents. She didn't read it through and we already had. So she discredited a bunch of people. She injured and damaged herself in that position, and she made the president look bad, which was a good time to fire her. But Trump believes in her. Okay, and again, I don't think she's a bad person. I just think it's too much. Everyone has their limit, their level that they can get to, and that's as good as they're going to be. She seems to be above that level for her, and that's why she's having a problem. The military used to say, we'll keep promoting you until you screw up. If you can handle the responsibility and you can function at whatever level, great. And then we'll try you at the next level up. And if you can't handle it, then we'll bring you back down to a level which we know you can handle. But we'll keep promoting you. If you can handle the responsibilities of a general, you'll eventually get there. But if you can only do something that you can only handle things at the level of a captain, you're not going higher.
Michael, they were rattling her cage, man. I'm not saying it wasn't a difficult position to be in the hot seat, but she started yelling back at everyone. And listen, and maybe she could be right most of the time when she's yelling back, but it didn't matter at that point. You don't want to get on the level of the Democrats. That's Michael, as you know, and I know, they embrace chaos, and that's what they got. They got all their sound bites out of that hearing and say, do you see Pam Bondi? She's terrible. She won't even address the Epstein files. Although the sad part about this, Michael, this whole lump of crap now has been dumped on President Trump's table. And regardless of what you think about it, now we have to make our way through it. 3 million out of the 6 million documents. And Michael, I think most people don't know a lot of these things to the FBI. These were like tipsters and things like that. So I don't know how much you want to put on exactly what is contained in a lot of these files, because a lot of it is misleading or just false.
Well, or it's something like, oh, Donald Trump is named in there and he has a conversation or he's tied directly to Epstein. Oh, do you mean the tip line when Donald Trump was approached by the FBI and he was telling them how Epstein needs to be arrested and he's filling out the complaint against the guy? Yeah, he's mentioned a lot in that document. Not exactly what the Democrats were trying to talk about, but there it is. And then they're pissed off, like, you're hiding stuff. It's his complaint in 2006. Okay? I mean, what do you want? But and it's also a no-win scenario. No matter what we provide, no matter how much is revealed, the answer is going to be you're hiding something. It's never going to be enough, because Democrats, it's never nothing is enough.
Michael, I know. Give them an inch, they'll take you a mile. And I agree with you. Michael, do you think that this is a long-term thing now, that the Epstein files are going to haunt right into the midterms?
It's going to haunt us for the next 20, 25 years. It's this generation's JFK files. we're never going to have an answer because there's always something else, kind of like 9/11. It's one of those conspiracy theories that's never going to die off. And for whether it's the left or the right, there's someone to point to in every party, every important person. You can point at them all and go, hey, Elon, you knew Epstein. Everyone of power and influence knew Epstein. That's part of the reason why he was so powerful and so influential. He knew everybody because he had to. Otherwise, he would be thrown in jail a lot sooner. So every government knew him.
Well, I know, Michael, I can't.
Yeah.
It's everything's guilt by association, guilt by association. Listen,
Yeah.
I want to wrap it up with one more thing I want to get your thoughts on. Now, Michael, I believe that you commented on this a long time ago or when it first came out. But my memory's kind of failing me here. But I want to get your thoughts on this. Judge blocks Hegseth and the Pentagon from punishing Senator Mark Kelly for calling on U.S. troops to resist unlawful orders. Are activist judges at it again?
Yeah, District Judge Leon out of D.C. He's an idiot. And I know there's a lot of people who are pissed off at me right now because I saw that and I had to remind them a couple of things. One, Mark Kelly committed treason. Treason isn't just your words. Yes, he restated something that's in the UCMJ, the Unified Code of Military Justice. That's true. It's when the timing of when he said that and the context of that, which was to give doubt to our military on the orders of their commander-in-chief. That is insurrectionist. That is, according to the UCMJ, the actions he was taking and the impact of those words is what is considered treasonous.
General Milley did it. Did General Milley do it too?
Yes, Milley is also a traitor. Absolutely, because he was conspiring with our enemy and giving them vital internal secrets that affect the safety and national security of America. Milley is absolutely a traitor. He should have been gone. But so for Mark Kelly, one, he is a treasonous traitor by his actions and his words to an extent. So you got that aspect of it. Two, Mark Kelly is a naval captain. More importantly, he is an officer of the United States military, which means he is subject to the UCMJ, the Unified Code of Military Justice, which has nothing to do with the Constitution or the laws of the United States. It is entirely separate. And anyone who has served understands, and they make it very clear to you the day you sign the contract. And more importantly, when you swear the oath, guess what? The Constitution no longer applies to you. Sorry, didn't mention that before. You don't have any of the freedoms or any of the rights that the Constitution gave to you. That's what you swore to. You gave up your rights. And we have a book called the Unified Code of Military Justice, 238 regulations that literally cover everything, especially Regulation 238. I believe it's 238G, which I love because it says everything not covered previously by any article or sub-article is hereby covered now. Boom. It's like, it covers everything. But it's a very explicit set of rules. And it applies to officers as well as enlisted. No matter what your rank is, everyone is subject to the UCMJ. It has nothing. One of the biggest things about this, and this is what Mark Kelly's terrified of. He, as an officer, can be brought back into action.
We lost your audio, Michael.
There we go. Got me back now?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I knocked over my mic. So as a member as an officer of the military, he can be called back into active duty at any time at the discretion of the government. That's point one. Point two, we do not have courts. The military has court martial. When you walk into a court martial, the rule is you are guilty until proven innocent beyond a shadow of a doubt. It is the exact opposite of our civilian court. And Mark Kelly walking into that with his weak excuse which will not fly in a military tribunal. He will be found guilty because he's wrong by definition of the
What are the chances of
UCMJ.
that happening, Michael? What are the chances of that happening?
Actually, pretty good, because it's actually an investigation is still ongoing under Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, what they were trying to do,
Michael, just so the audience knows this, brother. What are the civilian charges? What did the activist judge say can happen? What are the
they
civilian
said
charges
that
against the six?
they were trying to get, well, they were going to the jury to see if they could have a trial to see if, basically, if Mark Kelly was being treasonous or disrupting the nation with his words. And they said no, which we don't know what was said in the grand jury, how things were explained, who that they had. It was in D.C., so it could have been, D.C. is one of the biggest, bluest cities in the entire country. So who knows? There's a lot of things there. But District Judge Leon decided to say, well, this is a violation of the First Amendment. No, it's a consequence of the First Amendment. Yes, Mark Kelly had the right to say, and the other 6 Democrats, they had the right to say what they wanted to say. Just like you have the right.
No, I know what you're saying.
Well, no. Here's the thing, because I don't think some people in the audience may not get it. You have a right to scream fire in a crowded room. You have that right. The thing is, you also have the consequence of it. If there isn't a fire and people got trampled, you are liable for those people being trampled. And Mark Kelly is liable for the consequences of trying to.
Michael, just no, that's all valid points. I just want to make sure if I heard you correctly and if the audience heard you correctly. The threshold for conviction is much lower in a military tribunal. Is that right?
Oh, no, it's guaranteed. He's
so that means walking in. If it gets that way, and why would that be held up at this point, Michael?
Why it isn't being held up? It's
going forward.
It's ongoing. It is ongoing as we speak. Once the process, because he's not active duty, the process is they have to go through the investigation, then it goes into the court-martial, then it can be appealed.
Okay.
Judge Leon has zero authority to make a decision on a UCMJ case. No civilian judge can make a decision or influence. They're not even allowed to even try and influence a UCMJ, Unified Code of Military Justice, court-martial. They can't even speak about it. They can't address it whatsoever, at least until it gets to the appeal, which would also go into the Supreme Court. At that point, they can do something any step beforehand. So Mark Kelly would be punished by the military, and then he can try and appeal. And only then can a civilian judge even consider talking about, well, this was okay for him to do. That's it.
No, Michael, that's a great explanation. I think they're referred to as a seditious 6, I believe. And they're so sanctimonious. I was watching the female today saying how much she loves the country. She served in the military. I'm not in the military. I know you were in the military, Michael. What they were saying was very disturbing at so many levels, and I hope there's some type of justice against that kind of talk. Michael, as we wrap it up tonight, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Yeah, there's one thing that's a little bit odd, but it's close to home for you. You're going to love this. John Fetterman. Yeah. He impressed me. I just saw his comment before we started the show. I don't know if you caught this. It was
I saw it too, Michael. I saw it. I know what you're talking about.
Okay. So people may not have heard him. He said, we can't shut down DHS. We can't shut down ICE. We can't basically shoot our national security in its foot and then have the expanding, continuing problems that would only grow if we allow part of the government to shut down. It's just a domino effect. More parts, more people will be affected over time. So he's actually voting to keep the government open, which he did in the last shutdown as well, because he knows American citizens are getting hurt for Democrat politics, for the politicking going on. American citizens are going to be hurt. So again, I think this is stand up because he's explained it very clearly, very simply, because it is pretty simple. revealing the politics of it, and the blatant only reason why it's happening is politics. And he's saying, no, I can't go with my party on that. And by the way, many people go, oh, he's such a traitor to Democrats. Blah, blah. First of all, we have no allegiance to a party. Parties are not something that's part of the government. That's a choice. They truly aren't supposed to have any power. But two, the other thing that I think is important, people don't realize, he votes about 80 to 85% straight down the line Democrat. That's not a traitor. 80 to 85% of everything
I know that
he votes for. And when this is one of the few, it's part of that roughly 10% of Democrat policies. They're saying, no, that's a bridge too far. That's going to hurt too many people. It's not worth the politicking for the damage that's going to happen. And they're going, oh my God.
No, Michael, I agree. Michael, I agree on some things Fetterman is, but you remember, as you know, I'm in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I remember watching the first debate and Fetterman going to the podium. Good night, everybody. Thanks. And with Oz, yeah. I obviously would have wanted a Republican there. I think it was a bad choice that we went and Trump supported Dr. Oz. That's another thing. But no, it is interesting what you're saying about Fetterman, and I'm sure he's ruffling some feathers there in the Democratic Party. Now, Michael, listen, we're going to be wrapping it up. Where can the Matthew J. Show followers get access to Michael Voss on social media?
Absolutely. And by the way, no, I still say Fetterman, he isn't mentally sound. He shouldn't have the position. I don't care that I do like some of his ideas now. I've never liked it. He's mentally deficient. He shouldn't be in our Senate, period, always.
Okay, no.
But that being said, people can check out everything I'm talking about at No Soundbites Allowed. That's Soundbites with an I. No Soundbites Allowed. You can go to Rumble, to YouTube, Facebook. I'm in pretty much all the platforms. I've been doing this for 22 years now, if I remember correctly. I've been doing political commentary for over 22 years. I'm pretty much in every search engine and every II in the world. So you won't have any trouble finding me. I know for a fact when I was over in England and over in France back in 2019, I checked back then and I was in all the search engines. So you can find me.
There's no doubt about that. And Michael, just to let the viewers know, every Sunday, it's what, from 2:30? Starts at 2:30 Eastern Standard?
Yeah. For 9, we're now into year number 9. So for 9 years, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do my weekly Sunday live stream. That's a live stream where we're covering a bunch of issues, sometimes, or it's usually multiple topics I cover. And sometimes it's the big headline news that everyone's looking at, but maybe from a slightly different point of view, like we were just talking about. But also in terms of the immigration and in terms of that whole situation, the drug dealing and slavery. But I also cover a lot of stories that people haven't heard about that they should be talking about, like the guy in Vermont who was bringing in child slaves into America, wasn't covered by national news, but that's a national story.
No, I know.
So
Michael,
that's what people get to see. It's 9 years I've been doing it.
Michael, I listen to your show on Sundays, and sometimes I chime in.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a great show. And I'm, saying to all the Matthew J. Show followers, check out Michael on Sunday. He comes on at 2:30. You're live on X and I believe YouTube as well as other channels. Michael, listen, we'll probably talk before CPAC, March 25th. Okay. If we don't, I'll call you because I'd like to arrange something. Maybe we can do some kind of a show. I'll be at CPAC and you and I'll be live from there. And, maybe we can get together and do something for a half hour, an hour. And I'll let you know what's going on CPAC, and I'll get your thoughts on that. I think that might be an interesting thing to do for all our followers here on X and YouTube and Rumble. I think that would be a great idea as well. But I will be in contact with you. Michael, thanks for joining us tonight here at the Matthew J. Show. We always appreciate when you come on the show.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for your audience giving me an opportunity to be here.
No problem. Have a good night, Michael.
Night.
That's it.
Digital flames, no sound bites allowed is the name of this game. With a coffee in one hand and his puppy on his lap, cigarettes curling, smoking his political trap. Michael Voss. with his truthful slight, fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance, Puppy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.